Naomi walked through the city, her feet sore from days of wandering. Her clothes were worn, and her spirit felt as broken as the path beneath her feet. After leaving Angelica's house, she had nowhere to go. She knocked on doors, hoping for shelter, but each one was slammed in her face. She had no family, no friends, no one to turn to. As the sun began to set one evening, Naomi found herself standing in front of an uncompleted building. It looked abandoned, with no doors or windows, but it offered protection from the cold. Exhausted, she stepped inside and settled in a corner, hugging her knees to her chest. She stared at the cracked walls, thinking about the life she once had. Her heart ached for Betty. Naomi had pushed her daughter away for a man who never cared for her. Now she was left alone, with nothing but her regrets. The nights were the hardest. The building was cold, and Naomi had little to keep herself warm. She could hear the wind howling through the empty spaces, and sometimes the sounds of stray animals moving around outside. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten in days. She would go to the market during the day, hoping to find scraps, but even that was a challenge. Naomi was no longer the proud woman she once was. She had become a shadow, invisible to the world around her. People passed her by without a second glance, and she stopped hoping that someone would offer her help. All she had left were her memories, and even they seemed to fade with time. While Naomi struggled to survive, Betty's life had taken a different path. She worked hard and graduated from university as a doctor. Betty had always been determined, and her success showed her strength. Her mentor, Angelica, had been there for her every step of the way. After completing her studies, Betty decided to take a bold step. She moved to Nigeria and opened a small hospital. It wasn't easy, but Betty was determined to make a difference. She worked long hours, treating patients with care and compassion. Her reputation quickly grew, and more people began to trust her. Betty was no longer the scared, hurt girl who had lived under her mother's roof. She had become a strong, independent woman, making a name for herself. Betty's success brought her a sense of pride, but there was still something missing. Despite all her accomplishments, she couldn't shake the feeling of loss when she thought about her mother. She wondered where Naomi was, if she was still alive, and if they would ever meet again. Naomi's life in the uncompleted building became her new reality. Every morning, she woke up with the sun shining through the cracks in the walls. She would wander the streets, hoping to find food or someone who would offer her work. But day after day, she returned to her shelter empty-handed. Her health began to decline as hunger and exhaustion took their toll. One cold evening, as Naomi sat shivering in her corner, she thought about Betty. Her heart ached with the weight of her regrets. Naomi had pushed her daughter away when she needed her most, and now she was paying the price. She knew she couldn't change the past, but the pain of her decisions haunted her every day. Sometimes, Naomi would walk through the city, looking at the faces of the people who passed by, hoping to see a familiar one. But Betty was far away, living a life Naomi couldn't even imagine. Naomi was alone, and the loneliness was suffocating. One day, as Naomi sat in her usual corner, something happened that would change her life. The owner of the building, Chief Mario, came to inspect the property. He was a wealthy man, known for his vast properties and lavish lifestyle. As he walked through the building, he noticed Naomi sitting in the corner, her frail figure slumped against the wall. Chief Mario approached her, curious about the woman living in his abandoned property. When Naomi looked up and saw him standing there, she braced herself for harsh words or worse, being thrown out. But instead, Chief Mario asked her gently what she was doing in his building. Naomi, with tears in her eyes, told him her story, how she had lost everything, how she had been cast out by John and his family, and how she had nowhere to go. Her voice trembled as she spoke, and for the first time in a long while, Naomi felt the weight of her sorrow lift slightly, simply by sharing her pain. Chief Mario listened quietly, and to Naomi's surprise, he didn't judge her. He saw the grief in her eyes and felt a sense of pity. Though he was known to be a tough businessman, something about Naomi's story touched him. Without a second thought, he offered to help her. He took Naomi to his house, a grand mansion that stood in stark contrast to the life she had been living. For the first time in what felt like forever, Naomi slept in a warm bed, ate a proper meal, and felt a sense of safety. Chief Mario seemed kind at first, and soon their relationship grew closer. He was divorced, living alone in his big house, and Naomi, desperate for stability, found comfort in his company. She felt grateful for his generosity, and before long, they began dating. At first, everything seemed perfect. Chief Mario treated Naomi well, showering her with gifts and giving her the security she had longed for. Naomi thought she had finally found a new beginning, a chance to rebuild her life after all the suffering she had endured. She started to regain her strength, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope for a better future. But as time went on, Naomi began to see another side of Chief Mario. He was a man who loved to show off his wealth, and he believed that his money gave him the right to do as he pleased. He would often bring women home, and when Naomi confronted him about it, he simply shrugged and told her that he could do what he wanted. After all, he was rich and powerful. Why should he be limited by one woman? Naomi felt a deep sense of betrayal. She had thought that after all she had been through, Chief Mario would be different. She had hoped for love and respect, but instead, she found herself trapped once again, this time in a relationship with a man who didn't care about her feelings. Each time she tried to talk to him, he would dismiss her concerns, reminding her that he had rescued her from the streets. He made it clear that he believed she should be grateful, no matter how he treated her. Naomi's heart ached with the familiar pain of disappointment. She had lost everything once before, and now she feared she was losing herself again. She couldn't leave. Where would she go? But staying meant accepting a life of humiliation and heartbreak. The more Chief Mario flaunted his affairs in front of her, the more Naomi's spirit crumbled. At night, Naomi would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears rolling down her face. She had hoped for a fresh start, but it seemed that life had other plans for her. She felt trapped between her desire for a better life and the harsh reality of her situation. Chief Mario's wealth had given her comfort, but it had also come at a price Naomi wasn't sure she could continue to pay. Each day, Naomi watched as Chief Mario lived his life without a care, entertaining women in front of her as if she didn't exist. She felt invisible, once again reduced to nothing more than an afterthought. Naomi had survived so much, but this new chapter in her life felt like a cruel twist of fate. One day, Naomi woke up feeling unusually weak. Her head hit, and her body felt like it was on fire. She tried to get up from the bed, but her legs gave way, and she collapsed back down. Panic surged through her. She needed to get to the hospital. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed Chief Mario's number. When he picked up, relief washed over her for a brief moment. But her relief quickly turned to despair when she heard his voice on the other end. He was laughing, the sound of music and women's voices in the background. Naomi weakly told him she was feeling very sick and needed him to take her to the hospital. But Chief Mario, with his usual arrogance, brushed her off. He told her he was in the middle of having a good time with some women and couldn't be bothered. Then, without another word, he hung up the phone. Naomi lay there, staring at the ceiling, tears of frustration and pain slipping down her cheeks. She tried to pull herself up again, determined to make it to the door. If Chief Mario wouldn't help her, she would have to get to the hospital herself. But as soon as she tried to stand, her body gave in. Naomi collapsed on the floor, too weak to move. The security guard, who had been watching everything from outside, heard the loud thud and rushed inside. He found Naomi lying on the floor, barely conscious. Without hesitation, he called for an ambulance. Naomi's vision blurred as she lay there, barely aware of the sound of sirens approaching. Her body felt like it was sinking into the floor, the weight of everything crashing down on her. She couldn't fight anymore. When she arrived at the hospital, Naomi was rushed into the emergency room. She lay on the bed, her eyes heavy, feeling as if she were drifting in and out of consciousness. Then she heard a familiar voice. Weakly, Naomi opened her eyes, and standing there in a white doctor's coat was Betty. Both mother and daughter froze, their eyes locked in shock. Betty stood there, her heart racing as she took in the sight of the woman who had abandoned her years ago. Naomi's face was pale, her body frail, and she looked nothing like the strong woman Betty remembered from her childhood. Naomi's eyes filled with tears, and without a word, she began to cry. The weight of everything she had done, the mistakes she had made, crashed down on her in that moment. Betty, who had once been filled with so much anger and resentment, couldn't help but feel a deep sadness seeing her mother like this. Betty rushed to her side, taking Naomi's hand. They both cried, the years of pain and silence melting away in that hospital room. Naomi, through her tears, whispered an apology to her daughter. She told Betty how sorry she was for all the hurt she had caused, for choosing a man like John over her, for not protecting her when she needed it most. I was so blind, Betty. Naomi's voice trembled. I failed you in so many ways. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Betty, tears streaming down her face, shook her head. I've already forgiven you, Mama. I just wanted you to be happy. That's all I ever wanted. Naomi couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had expected Betty to hate her forever, to never want to see her again. But here was her daughter, now a successful doctor, showing her kindness and forgiveness despite everything. Naomi's heart ached with regret, but for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. They hugged each other tightly, both crying and letting out years of pent-up emotion. Naomi realized that she had been given a second chance. Her daughter, despite all the pain, was still there for her. And now, for the first time in a long time, Naomi promised herself that she would never take that for granted again. Betty, still emotional, told Naomi that she would take care of her, that no matter what had happened in the past, they were still family. When Naomi was discharged from the hospital, she was surprised to find Chief Mario waiting outside, looking uncharacteristically remorseful. He approached her, his usual arrogance replaced by a humble expression. He started to apologize, telling Naomi that he hadn't realized how serious her condition was. He claimed he thought she was joking when she had called him, and he was sorry for not helping when she needed him the most. Naomi, still weak but desperate for stability, listened to his apology. Despite everything that had happened, despite knowing in her heart that he hadn't changed, she blindly forgave him. She convinced herself that maybe he had learned from his mistakes and would be better moving forward. She wanted to believe that people could change, and maybe, just maybe, Chief Mario was one of those people. A few days later, Betty decided to visit her mother. Betty had been keeping her distance, still wary of Chief Mario and not entirely convinced that he was good for her mother. But she loved Naomi and wanted to check on her, so she came by for a brief visit. After spending some time with her mother, catching up and sharing a few laughs, Betty got up to leave. As Betty stepped out of the house and walked toward the front gate, Chief Mario pulled into the driveway, his car coming to a stop just as Betty was about to leave. He got out of the car, his eyes immediately drawn to Betty. There was a strange look on his face, a mixture of surprise and admiration. He didn't say anything to her directly, but his eyes followed her as she walked away. When Chief Mario entered the house, he asked Naomi about the woman who had just left. Naomi, smiling, told him that it was Betty, her daughter. She expected him to express some form of respect, considering how much Betty had accomplished in her life. But instead, his response caught her completely off guard. "So that's your daughter," Chief Mario said, his voice almost gleeful. "She's beautiful, very classy." Naomi felt a small sense of pride at his words, but couldn't help but notice something off in his tone. She replied playfully, "What about me? I'm classy too." Chief Mario, without a hint of hesitation, said, "You? No, you're old school. That's the kind of woman I like. Classy, beautiful, educated." His words hit Naomi like a punch to the gut. She tried to laugh it off, but inside her heart sank. The man she had forgiven, the man she had hoped had changed, was still the same. He wasn't sorry for what he had done. He hadn't learned anything. In fact, it seemed like he was now interested in her daughter. Naomi felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She had always known deep down that Chief Mario wasn't a good man, but hearing him compare her to her own daughter, dismissing her as old school, made her realize just how little he valued her. It wasn't enough that she had been there for him, forgiven him for all his wrongs, and stayed by his side. He still wanted more. He wanted something younger, something flashier, something he could show off. That night, Naomi lay in bed, her mind racing with strange thoughts. Is Betty really my daughter? She wondered. Was she switched at birth? She couldn't understand why every man in her life seemed to be drawn to Betty. Is she a witch? Naomi shook her head, trying to push the idea away, but the thoughts kept coming. No, this can't be happening. I'm starting to dislike her. She must be a witch. I shouldn't have let her come to my home. She's dangerous. Naomi's heart grew heavy as she thought about how Chief Mario had looked at Betty. I can see he's already starting to like her, she thought angrily. This won't happen while I'm alive. Naomi made up her mind. She would keep her distance from Betty. A few days later, Betty called her mother, hoping to spend the weekend together. She missed Naomi and wanted to visit, but when she asked if she could come over, Naomi instantly said no. Betty was surprised. Why, Mama? Is everything okay? Naomi's answer was cold and brief. I'm busy. Betty felt hurt and confused. After hanging up, she called Angelica, telling her what had happened. Angelica tried to comfort her, saying, Maybe your mother is just busy with something. Don't worry too much. But Betty couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Mario came home one afternoon and asked about Betty. Naomi felt angry. Stop asking about her. It's not your business. Mario replied that he liked Betty and wanted to marry her. He said he didn't want Naomi anymore because she was too old and uneducated. He offered Naomi money and a house if she let him have Betty. Naomi was furious. I will never let you have her. The next day, Naomi went to the hospital to see Betty. She told her to stay away from Mario and her house. Betty was confused and asked why. Naomi insisted she just do as she said and left. Naomi walked out, leaving Betty worried and unsure about their relationship. A week later, Mario found out where Betty worked and decided to visit her at the hospital. He approached her and said, Betty, I've been thinking about you. I love you. Betty felt uncomfortable and understood why her mother had been acting strange. She told him to leave and explained that her mother didn't want him around, and neither did she. Mario insisted that he wanted to be with her and that Naomi didn't understand. Betty warned him that if he came back, she would report him for harassment. Mario frowned but continued to try to persuade her. Betty remained firm and repeated that she wanted nothing to do with him. Realizing he was losing his chance, Mario fell silent. Betty turned and walked back into the hospital, feeling relieved but anxious about what he might do next. Mario got home feeling frustrated. He immediately confronted Naomi about what happened with Betty. He demanded to know why she had spoken to Betty in a way that pushed her away. Naomi replied that she was trying to protect Betty and that Mario was not the right man for her daughter. She explained that he was selfish and didn't truly care about Betty's well-being. Mario argued that he loved Betty and wanted to be with her. He accused Naomi of being the barrier between them, insisting that if she let Betty make her own choices, things would be different. Naomi countered by saying that Betty deserved better than Mario. She reminded him of his past actions and how he had treated her poorly. As the argument continued, they exchanged hurtful words. Mario claimed that Naomi was driving him to seek happiness elsewhere. Naomi insisted that he couldn't force Betty to love him. Eventually, the conversation reached a standstill. The air was thick with tension, and both felt the weight of their disagreement. The next day, Naomi decided to visit Betty. She felt remorseful for her previous actions. When she arrived at the hospital, she approached Betty and said, I'm sorry for everything. I was stupid to let my feelings get in the way of our relationship. I promise I will never choose any man over you again. Betty looked at her mother and said she forgave her. I understand you've been through a lot, she replied. Naomi then began to share her struggles. She told Betty how Chief Mario had brought different women home, showing no respect for their relationship. She described the pain of feeling unwanted and the fear of losing her daughter to someone like him. As Naomi spoke, Betty felt a deep sense of pity for her mother. "You shouldn't have to go through that. You deserve better," she said. Betty then offered a solution. "Why don't you move in with me? I have a big house now. You can stay with me, and we can start fresh together." Naomi felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "Of course, Mama. You're my family. It's time we support each other," Betty replied. Naomi packed her belongings and moved in with Betty. They created a warm and loving home together, rebuilding their relationship. A year later, Betty met the love of her life. They dated for a while, and it became clear that they were meant to be together. When he proposed, Betty was overjoyed. Naomi felt happiness for the first time in a long while. She watched her daughter blossom and finally find the love she deserved. On the wedding day, Naomi stood by Betty's side, proud of how far they had both come. The two women had faced many challenges, but their bond had only grown stronger. Together, they created a new chapter in their lives, one filled with love, support, and hope for the future. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.